Here we are, episode 10 of Law. I am here with my co-host, Wolfman,
Yo, what's going on, folks?
and we have a special guest. Now, I'm super excited to have him on. We haven't had him on any of these streams before. He is an OG in the community that we are a part of, and I am super stoked to have him here. He is a big fan of the system we're going to talk about today. So, can you introduce yourself?
Hey, thanks for that, Larson. It's Ruben, everybody. It's an honor to be here, and I appreciate you guys, and I love your show. So thanks for having me.
Oh man, it's a pleasure.
I'm stoked too. It's like having a celebrity on
Right?
this
I know, it's
episode, like a real Hollywood celebrity.
I know. I
I
got to
wish.
turn my light up more. I got to so it makes me look a little brighter. All right, Wolfman. So what we got going on today?
So today we are not talking about Uranus.
Mm.
We're talking about Saturn. That's right, folks. The Sega Saturn, an underappreciated system that did not last long in the United States, and it's a shame because it really is a great system. It has great games for the system. Obviously not a large library. I want to say, Reub, you could correct me. I want to say, obviously, it came out first in Japan. I want to say 94. And I think it came stateside like around May 1995.
Yeah,
Sound
sounds
about right?
Yeah.
And I think, honestly, I think it was discontinued by like 1998. I think they had already like given up on the system. I know it hung around for another year or two until like the Dreamcast, kind of fully came out. But I
Yeah.
mean, you're talking about a very small lifespan. You're talking about less than 10 million units sold and a small library. Now, the library is actually extremely large if you consider Japan. And that's one of the great things about the Sega Saturn is you could get something that you could, and Dan's holding up the console. And I can't get behind my TV. My Saturn's behind there, but I have this little black thing that I plugged into the back of my Sega Saturn, and it would allow me to play Japanese games. It did something where I don't know,
It's
it
this
kind of like
port
tricked.
right here. Is that right?
Yeah, yes. And I'll show some
There's the
games
battery in there.
later from Japan that you could play. But if you're looking at Japan's library with North America's library and the PAL region, it's really a rich library. But if you're looking at just the States, it's not that rich.
Yeah. When you mentioned that, well, if I distinctly remember, um, eagerly awaiting for it to hit the States and waiting to see what Sega USA was going to do as far as their launch for America, because everybody knows US's launch is always going to be different than Japan's launch.
Yeah.
I think the Sega Saturn launch had a lot of some odd games and games that didn't necessarily appeal to U.S. players, but it was already alive and well over there, and so we were eagerly awaiting to see what happened and how it was gonna do over here.
Well, the thing that I remember is that it was like a ghost launch. Like people were waiting for it, but there was never like okay, it's coming out this day. Like Sega Saturn 9999, right? They were advertising that. Sega Saturn wasn't that way. Like it was like all of a sudden, boom, it's out, and you're like, what? It just came out. Just what? The Sega Saturn's out today? It was really weird. It was like I remember this time where it was like the marketing was just wonky. I think they were putting so much money and having so much success in Japan that I think they just anticipated that that wave was just going to carry over here in the States. And at that point, the internet wasn't around really, and so I mean, the wave didn't translate as much, right? Japan was still its own island, and it was kind of separate from the U.S. So I think that was one of the big pieces of that. And another great thing that you guys talked about is the library, because Japan, this was a lot bigger than over here in the States. I liken it to how Neo Geo was, where Neo Geo over here in the States was pretty small, and it doesn't seem like it has a huge library, but Japan kept that system alive for freaking ever.
Yeah. Yep.
And the Sega Saturn, though, there are games on this thing that are freaking iconic, though. I mean, like, just wicked, wicked games on here that you didn't. It was a huge step up for the home console. Even for PlayStation, like the difference between some of the games that are on this versus PlayStation was just amazing. And so, yeah, I really liked this system. I still like it, but I know we'll get into this a little bit more, but this is one of the, again, like Neo Geo, expensive system to collect for. Oh my gosh. Like you might as well just donate a kidney or something, because this stuff is no joke. What you got, Reub? I know I can see the wheels turning, brother.
Yeah. Well, for sure. I mean, I remember when you're totally right. They launched it kind of like a little sniper launch. Like they didn't make a big fuss about it. And I remember the first commercials came out on MTV, and we started seeing them in Game Pro and Game Fan and IGN and EGM, and they didn't quite know how to market it. I remember some of the ads were kind of goofy. They used a little bit of a sexual innuendos for some other. It's like it's just funny. It's almost like a Japanese Sega
Dantron approved
advertising marketing didn't know quite how to capture the American market.
Yeah, for sure, Dantron approved on their advertising, and Sony had some wild ones like that too, and Nintendo. And I'm like, see, over here in the States, it was weird because that wasn't really super acceptable over here, but in Japan, that place is wild. So that's when it comes to innuendos and like that kind of stuff in Japan, that's like the Wild West out there when it comes to that. So yeah, some marketing genius kind of dropped the ball on the Saturn, and I think that marketing itself is what really did this in the States, not necessarily the hardware. The hardware is freaking solid.
Well, I remember in Japan, like some of their launch titles were like mahjong
right?
Games and pachinko games. It just doesn't fly here, man. I mean, people want to see American games, and I know fighting games were huge and stuff. So, which brings us to like Virtua Fighter 2, if we can lead into that.
Sure.
I just remember being at one of those just epic games where Sega AM2 was actually able to bring the real arcade game home to their console. Like I was just like, and having everybody, all of us, we had nobody had any 1080p TVs back then or 4K, LED TVs. It was all CRTs. And to see Virtua Fighter 2 on a CRT, the resolution actually was like, it was too high for the actual CRTs, but the picture was so crisp, and it was just amazing to see the Saturn actually replicate the arcade version to a T.
I agree with you on that one. That was Virtua Fighter 2 actually was one of the first games that I would call a system seller, but it didn't come out for a while, right? I mean, Virtua Fighter 2 didn't it came out probably a year and a half into the lifespan of
this was first.
Yeah. Like a year and a half or a little over a year into the life of the US Saturn is when that
I'm
came
sorry,
out.
I misspoke. I meant Virtua Fighter, just the first one.
Yeah. And so that was freaking amazing. But Virtua Fighter 2 in particular was such a freaking upgrade from the first Virtua Fighter.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, Reub, I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
That game was amazing.
They improved on the backgrounds, and everything was in high resolution. They just upped the ante on it, and people were like, "Wow, there's still potential in this,"
I love Virtua Fighter 2. It's a great pick, man.
Absolutely.
I mean,
it was different too, because I think a lot of people were used to the Street Fighter. They were either Street Fighter or more combat players, where the half turn, and Mortal Kombat players are way different than Street Fighter players. I'm a Street Fighter guy myself, and when I play Mortal Kombat, I'm like out of my element. And then I meet Mortal Kombat guys, and they destroy me. But then I'm like, I play them as Street Fighter. I'm like, what's up? It's just it's a different breed. And Virtua Fighter was, in that respect, you had to learn a different way to play it.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, because it was 3D, right? So it had the three-dimensional aspect of the dodging, moving to the right or the left, and using all of that. So it wasn't 2D like those other fighters. Street Fighter, I'm like you. I'm more of a Street Fighter guy. I like the back to block. So whereas Scantron, no, and Mortal Kombat guys, they have a block button, so they're used to just hitting that block button. Totally changes
Mhm.
how a fighting game works. Like totally different.
Yep, it's a game
Um,
changer.
it is. So you got some people like you and myself that Street Fighter, what's up? But you start getting into Mortal Kombat, it's like, not quite. A little more sketch. But
Mhm.
yeah, good choice, Rube. I like that. Good starting us off hot with the fighting game for sure. What you got, Wolfman?
Okay, so I think I am going to start. Actually, you know what? Ruben inspired me. Let's
He inspires me
let's
too.
let's stick with the fighting genre, and absolutely one of my favorites. And I think it's got to be the graphics. And Capcom was just a banging company, man. I felt like everything they were putting out around that time, like Super Nintendo, Nintendo time, was just like gold. And this just captured my attention because not only was it a great 2D, big sprites, great fighter, but I love like the monster kind of theme with Night Warriors. And it's to this day, I still gravitate towards this game. I know they had a couple iterations, right? I mean,
Night Stalkers.
yeah, right.
Ball
And
Stalkers, yeah.
yep. And they did some crossover too, right? Like, didn't they have characters in this game that was in like the
Marvel versus Capcom.
yes,
Yep.
right. So it's
Vampire Saviors.
Yep.
yep, very popular, tons of fun. I don't know how much this goes for now, but like you
A lot.
said, Dan, you can't I go to a lot of flea markets and estate sales, and people that watch the episode know that. I swear, I think in all of the time that I've been flea marketing, I may have seen maybe 5 to 6 Sega Saturn games in the wild. And anytime I see a Saturn game, I scoop it up as quick as possible because you just can't find these. And if you do find it, the case is all cracked. It might not have the manual inside. The disc might be beat up. So it's just, I don't know. To me, they're very collectible. I just love looking at them. It's huge. These games are huge. The artwork is great. And this is just a very fun fighter. Anybody have anything they want to say about Night Warriors?
So I got two things based upon what you said. So one, you talked about how the sprites and stuff worked. So Sega systems in particular, starting at the Saturn disc base, going into the Dreamcast, their processing power for 2D sprites was unmatched, unparalleled. Like PlayStation could not hang with the speed and the
Yeah.
sprites that they can put on the board and the colors that they were able to throw up there. So when it comes to 2D
Yeah.
fighters, that's why the Sega Saturn and Sega Dreamcast excel so much with those systems. For one, that's a huge thing. And then secondly, I want to talk about what you touched on as the one drawback to Sega Saturn in particular, besides its rarity, is the age and the quality of the discs. That is the
Yeah.
number one system that you will have to worry about with what's called disc rot. Um, Disc rot is there's not really anything you can do to stop it. Once your disc starts to rot, and it looks fine, your disc looks fine, but you hold it up to a light source, and you'll start seeing little pinholes through it. You can like see through, and then your disc is just done. So it's not. It's hard to collect for if you're going to collect and try and play the games because you might do everything you can. You keep them in a nice, right in your house. You're not keeping it too moist. You're not getting it too cold or too hot, and it'll still happen to certain discs and you can't stop it. So that's another kind of drawback to this system, unfortunately. But another positive is there is a great market for bootleg Saturn games. If you did want to actually play some Saturn games on the actual legit hardware, you can find some bootleg discs if you wanted to. But anyways, that's the two things I got out of what you were talking about, and I love that fighting game, by the way, Wolf. Great
Yeah,
choice.
and don't forget, Dan, just to follow up with what you said about how the Saturn kind of process those 2D sprites, the sound chip that they put in the Sega Saturn gave you amazing sound. I think better than PlayStation. Just the sound was just on point. So between the great crisp 2D graphics, and that sound, I mean, it, like Ruben already talked about it, it was like bringing the arcade home, man. It was having the arcade in your palm of your hand using that controller. I was blown away by some of the games on the Sega Saturn.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that Larson was totally correct on that. It seems like every Capcom game that came to Saturn was like a very accurate version of it. X-Men: Children of the Atom,
Mm-hmm.
Wolf's Game, Street Alpha 2, Street Fighter Alpha 2. Like every game was just on point. Like they knew how to work with the system. And Sega unfortunately had a reputation of being hard to code for, because there was I think there was 2 chips in it, and so it was harder to program, and a lot of people had a hard time doing. But 2D sprites was, it's bread and butter. Like nobody could push 2D sprites like the Sega Saturn was, and I think it had a dedicated music thing. I remember listening to CDs on it. When you first booted up the Sega Saturn, you can actually throw a CD on it, or you can actually listen to the music of the game just on it without booting the game up. So yeah, they just it did certain things very well, very, very well.
The thing I liked about Saturn too, since we're still kind of talking about hardware, I know we went to the games and we're going back to hardware a little bit, was for fighting games, their controllers were freaking awesome. The 6-button 8, with the 2 top. They had a couple of iterations of that controller. They had this one, which is the smaller. Then they had another one that was a little bit bigger. I liked this one better personally. I liked the bumpers better on this one, but that's just a preference thing. So the thing that Sega was doing with the Saturn, I feel bad because they were trying to do so many things that was so freaking unique. Like with their like you said, like the processing power that it had for the 2D sprites in particular, the audio that you're talking about, but they also had, since we're still talking about hardware, they also had this.
Oh yeah.
This NetLink adapter was freaking dope. For the time, this was like, I want to say, outside of the Super Famicom, what was it? Was it the normal Famicom or there was some other one that had like an internet connectivity to it.
Yeah,
Which
it
one
might
was
have been it might have been the Super.
So right around the same. So I won't say that they were the first one, but they were one of the first to really start putting it on the map, where they were talking about like you could link to the net. There was a unique web browser. You could get email on this stuff. As a matter of fact, I was looking at this. I hadn't opened this thing in like 10 years. So I was like, oh, let me take a look at this. So I was peeking in here. Dude, it's all sealed still. Like all my, like the game.
Oh wow.
The disc inside it is still sealed.
I love it.
All of the freaking books and stuff still in there. I mean, it's cool. I mean, I would never hook it up now, but it was just the hardware and the stuff that they were trying to do with this system. If they would have, gosh darn it, Sega, if you would have marketed it better, there was nothing out there that could have hung with you, but you didn't. You like kind of you botched your launch. The way I feel again is that they straight up just was like, it's doing so great in Japan. Look at all these great features. Yeah, we don't need to advertise it. It's fine. They understand what's going on over their states. Once you start getting all the magazines start talking about it, it'll sell, no problem. But I'm like, dude, you've already missed your opportunity. You got to build up that anticipation, or the hype train, as we like to call it, right? The hype train was not there. It was there for the few that actually read those magazines and stuff, and it was all right, I'm waiting for this thing to come out. Then it's like, oh, here it is, and you're like, wait, what? I didn't even know it was out yet. So
and they were losing badly to PS1. Like, it's a couple years into the Sega Saturn. Ruben brought up a great point. It was, in reading like articles about the Saturn, a lot of companies were having problems programming and getting games out in a timely manner. I remember looking at games that I saw on Electronic Gaming Monthly, Ruben, and I'm like, oh man, this looks cool. And then like you'd find out that it's delayed 6 months, and then they like then they shit canned it and it never came out. And it's just, they kept delaying and canceling games, and PS1 just kept putting games into the market, and
Yep.
they just got lost in the shuffle. And with all the things that you said too, Dan, horrible opening and bad advertising, and it was just, I don't know, you could say it was botched all the way around. I mean, it was not good.
Yeah, I remember buying the Netflix, and it was a 56K modem situation, and it was not very great. But I remember that one of the first games that I was excited about that had online capability with it was Duke Nukem 3D, I believe. And so I was like, oh, I was stoked. I was like, oh wow, this is going to be awesome. But Sega didn't see it all the way through. They just didn't capitalize it. They didn't flesh it out where it could have been. And they kind of did that later on with Dreamcast and Fantasy Star Online. They just didn't take it all the way to its full potential. Even though Quake Arena was cool to play they just didn't take it where they should have been. But it's PS1 they just came. I don't think anybody saw it coming. Here's Sony launching their own video game console. Nobody saw it coming, but they had heavy hitters. They had developers. They had they had names, and they had Namco. They had Tekken. They had they were just ready. And I think Sega kind of rest on their laurels. They didn't. I think they were outmatched a little bit. But I remember, same thing as you. I remember reading the back of Game Fan and looking at all these imported games that we were never going to get.
Exactly.
And being like, man, when is this game going to get here? And like,
yeah,
and all the Japanese market had all these access to these sweet games, and it's just like nobody in the States wanted to spend the time or the money or the coding to get them over here. And one of them was X-Men versus Street Fighter. And I remember I have to go in the back, and I actually bought the game as an import. I think I paid maybe $69-$79 for it, and then I had to buy the RAM cart for it. And I waited patiently for it to come, and there was a certain trick to get it to work in a Sega Saturn. But and I also remember buying Metal Slug as an import, because it was one that was compatible with the RAM cart. But once I got it going, I mean, lo and behold, I had X-Men versus Street Fighter on my Sega Saturn. I mean, like arcade perfect. And I remember that one was like a sleeper hit, and just people were like, Game Fan, everybody was like, wow, X-Men versus Street Fighter on Sega Saturn, like you can actually have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that so when we're talking hardware, so here's my thing, Reub, because you touched on a great thing when it came to how Sony was and how Sega was. But so here's the thing. Sony came out of nowhere, but they came out, like you said, with all those other, but they also developed a system that was easy to develop for. Like they made it really easy. And then there's a couple other pieces that were in there too, right? You had Nintendo, which was dominating the home market and was kind of okay with just dominating the home market, right? And you had Sega, who was like second in the home market, but really close, but they had all those arcade style stuff going on too. So they had stretched themselves way out over these two huge mediums, right? Arcades, and so like you said, resting on their laurels, they had all of these other things going on. They were like, oh, okay, so, we're number 2 in the console, but we're doing all this other stuff with the arcades. So combined together, we're really pushing over Nintendo, and so we're doing good. And then Sony comes out and it's like, I'm not worried about that. Just kind of ignore them or whatever. It'll be fine. But I think that the Sega Saturn, in my gut, I believe this was the beginning of the end for Sega and and hardware manufacturing. How botched they were with this. Because they, like you said, they took a form of this technology and shifted into Dreamcast fairly quickly, actually. So they were able to get all that stuff out, but they were already dying at that point. I think they were like, this is the last gasp to see if we could hold in. And I think they would have done well, but they had other players in the market that were popping in too. So that was the problem. And
Yeah,
so,
they already had heavy losses from the Saturn launch,
yep.
and the Dreamcast, even though it showed so much promise. I mean, it just, you're right. They had, by that time, I think the writing was on the wall. They were dying on the vine, and they were hoping to keep their name in the game with another console, but Dreamcast just couldn't compete with the Sony. But it's funny when what was, what was interesting about Sony too is they kind of pulled a Microsoft thing, and they actually hired their own companies to develop their own games for their own system.
Hmm.
Crystal Dynamics,
Mm-hmm.
Psygnosis with
Yep.
Wipeout, and all these other games. And Sega was all in house. It was either their library, AM2, but Sony was smart. They had already did their homework, and they're like, hey, we're going to bring our own kick-ass games, and we're going to bring on, they probably best they bring on, not to go on down a Sony road, but they bring on the best version of Doom ever. Their version of Doom was like, whoa, shit, this thing is like cruising at 60 frames per second. Added
Mm-hmm.
lighting, had 1 and 2 on there. I mean, like, I remember networking our systems to play Doom just on PlayStation.
Hmm.
But they were on top of it. They had Namco, but they had third party developers already ready to go, and that's where Sega kind of like relied on their own library, and it just wasn't enough.
Well, it
Mm-hmm.
didn't make financial sense too for a lot of those third parties, right? Because Sony, again, they created their system so it's easy to develop for, and it was CD based medium, so that already kind of pushed Nintendo out, right? So, like, for instance, Square Enix, right? Square Enix was like, forget you, Nintendo, you're staying cart based,
Yep.
done, because we want to build these
Mm-hmm.
big games. And then they got these two different systems, right, that are CD based, but Sega was like, do you want to pay? Because Sega, if you remember back in the day, because of the name Sega, you were paying a ton of freaking money to them to be able to throw it on their system. Because again, they were big in the market at that point. But Sony, young, up and coming, they were just like, nah, man, just come over here. This is where the party's at. They were like the Southwest Airlines when Southwest Airlines, like, come on over here. It's all gonna be fun. We're easy to work with. It's fine. And that was very appealing, I think, to a lot of the third-party developers. And you showed, and it even carries on to today. If you do not have good third-party support, your system will have a problem. It
Mm-hmm.
just will. Even newer systems, it's just the way that it is. And Sega Saturn was a was a casualty of that.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. They kind of took that sports team mentality, like a Boston Red Sox or a Yankees or a Lakers. They bought everything they could to make sure that when their launch was, it was going to be money. So hats off to them. They're still going strong.
Oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So we're gonna go back to games now. I love talking about the system though, but yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think you're up,
is it
right?
me? Okay, so I'm gonna
Your
talk about
game?
this game. It's freaking awesome. And I don't just love this game, but my kids love this game too. It's fun, it's shiny, it's bright, and it's full of bugs.
Yeah.
Bug. This game is freaking wild. It is a 3D platformer. Um, the controls are a little wonky, but I mean it's playable. It's fun. The music. Anybody that's played this game, and
Mm-hmm.
you put this game up there and you start playing it, the music on this game is
Yep.
freaking crazy.
Mhm.
So if you have the ability to play this game, of course, if you have a Sega Saturn or you see this game out in the wild, just buy it. Just trust me, buy it, Bug or Bug Two. And then or if you have the like a lot of us have arcade machines that run emulation. If you have the ability to play it emulated, this is a really excuse me fun one to play. And so I would say Bug is just one of those easy games to get into as well. And then it's kind of like easy to get into. There's some adventure, but yet it's still kind of keeps it linear enough that it's a lot of fun. It's a good game. What do you guys think?
I like Bug, and I like it for all the reasons you said. I love platformers, and I think the thing that resonated with me the most is the thing I remember about the game is the music. And once again, it's like that's where Saturn is showing its baring its teeth, because I was always fascinated with how games sounded on the Saturn, and there's another example of that. Matter of fact, the next game I'm going to show also took advantage of like the sound and like the rock star appeal that game had. But Bug, I never played the second.
It's
I
just
didn't.
as good.
Matter of fact, I didn't even know there was a second.
Yep, it's just as good. It's Bug
Okay.
TOO.
Wow, I might have to check that out on the old Mega.
Yeah, it's I remember the what was it, the digital sound of him when he's talking, the the little sound bites. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just really really cool, really a cool game. What do you got, Ruben? Do you remember playing Bug?
Yeah, I remember playing Bug on a Sega Saturn sampler
Oh yeah.
CD, and I was just like, "Whoa!" I mean, this game is real, true 3D.
Yeah.
Because we would like go in and out, and it was all about landing the right spots, but the game just had character, man. It just had character, and that's where Sega. I'll always be a devout Sega guy. I think Sega always just has character. They just know how to bring that character to their games. Iconic things that you really love and you go back to, like a Stall or, of course, Sonic, but Clockwork Knight. But Bug had that just personality to it, like it was almost like a pre-Gex. It kind of just had a fun vibe to it. But Bug 1 and Bug 2, man, good memories. Really good memories.
Yeah, he had that saunter when he'd walk. You remember that? So good.
That's a great pick, man.
I like that one. What you got, Rube? What you got for next one?
I'm gonna delve into Virtual Cop. I didn't play this game actually too much in the arcades, but I remember seeing it in magazines and just being like, "Whoa," because I've always loved gun games. You go all the way back down to like Mad Dog McCree and stuff like, and those things I used to play back in the arcades. But didn't play too much of Virtua Cop. I remember catching it in an arcade or two, but just being wowed by it because it was one of those shooting games where, like, depending on where you shoot your characters, they responded differently to it. But I remember when it dropped on Sega and you had to buy the gun game for it. But I mean, it was just arcade perfect. It was arcade perfect, and it was just one of those games for me where, like, to this day, it's still one of my favorite games. It's one of those games you can play over and over, and I'm all about, for me, points, like getting a better score or playing those same games over. And we'll talk about Knights later, but Knights was the same thing, and playing the same game and just mastering it, mastering Virtua Cop and getting those headshots and avoiding any innocent people and just getting all the way to the end without dying. I just think Virtua Cop 1 for me was the first one, just like, wow, this is like arcade perfect game, man. With the gun, it was like perfect. I just wish I had a bigger CRT to play on it, but
yeah, you had that like 15-inch. Was it you had like a 15-inch CRT back then?
I think I had like a 20 or 22 inch. It wasn't too bad,
okay.
but I was playing it on my TV. Anybody else? Any Virtua Cop back in the day?
I love Virtua Cop, but I never played it on Saturn. I just didn't. I don't know why.
Same.
I don't know if I should. I mean, I really should. Because I want to buy the gun anyways. But now, buying the gun that I'll never use and Virtua Cop together, I'm gonna be like $250, $300 for that, and I'm just like, it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, with Gun for IR and being able to play it in other ways. I mean, but yes, I love that game. It was
definitely one of those games where you're going to pay more for it because you're buying one game with three stages, and then you're buying the gun. So everybody knew that, like Time Crisis for PS1, you're going to pay a little bit more. You better love that game if you're paying for it, because it's going to cost more money.
Yeah. Good choice, though. Man, I love that game, dude. That game is fun. All the Virtual Cops are fun. All of them.
Yep.
That can't be said for Time Crisis. There's a few Time Crisis I didn't like so much. So, but like for instance, the first Time Crisis wasn't my favorite, but Time Crisis 2, 3, 4 is good. I don't like 5 personally, and I've played it on the actual arcade machines. But Virtua Cop, I can tell you, I've liked all of them. And again,
same.
like you say, I do remember the shooting the leg and seeing the guy like flip, or shooting their arm and seeing their arm flip back. It's like, oh
Mm-hmm.
man, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, Virtua Cop 2 just upped the ante. Better graphics, more interaction, more things to shoot, more fun stages. It just Sega just knew how to do a good thing well, and just continue to deliver the same good thing. More of the good stuff. So those are really fun games for me. I still got my gun.
Nice. Don't get rid of it. I get claims. If you decide you're gonna get rid of any of that stuff, remember contact Dantron first.
Yeah, and I just want to state that Ruben has these games, right? I
Hmm.
mean, he is not only loves, is a Sega fanboy, but he has the actual games that he's talking about. Um I remember back, I don't know if you remember, Reub, you and I, we were some of the first people on the Zoom calls, and I remember one night you and I just went to town on Saturn. Like there wasn't many people in the Zoom, or a lot of people had dropped out, and we just had this just really great discussion about Saturn, and you told me about all these games you had, and I was just like, wow, I like this guy. This guy's a gamer and he's a retro game collector. This is my type of guy.
Yeah, I remember that. It's uh, on a side note, it's like Sega Saturn wasn't my first console by any means, but for some reason, Sega Saturn just was is definitely one of my favorites. There was something about it. It's just at that time, I just feel like Sega knew how to make games like nobody else,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just like, and for that, I mean, I think for all of us, it's all about the games. I mean, I don't care how cool the graphics are. It's just, hey, is the game fun?
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember, I had in my SENS, I had a Nintendo I had NES, I had an Atari,
Mm-hmm.
and but the Sega Saturn for me was like that first one. I was just like, and I went out and I was buying even crappy games, just like before the reviews would hit, I would buy any Working Designs game. I would go buy. If I knew Working Designs was making it, I was buying it. Magic Knight Rayearth, Albert
Mm-hmm.
Odyssey,
Mm-hmm.
any one of those, because I just knew Raystorm. They knew how to do their games. They put like this really cool foil inside and the booklets, and they kept the integrity and like all the really fun stuff from the Japanese version, because they knew American gamers really wanted that, even though American companies bastardized their versions of the American games, thinking like, oh, they're a different audience or they're not wise enough to like this.
Mm-hmm.
Working Designs knew that they wanted the original version of it. So,
Mm-hmm.
but for me, I collected a lot of their games, and I even have some really obscure Sega Saturn games like Atari's Greatest Hits, and
Mm-hmm.
I
I
mean,
think I have that too.
I have like a Bust a Move version,
Mm-hmm.
a Bust a Move for it, and then like it's crazy how much the prices, like you guys were talking about earlier, the prices are just skyrocketing for Sega Saturn games. For some reason, they're just, well, about a year ago they were super high, and they're still high, but it's crazy how much they're going for.
And those working design titles that you mentioned are some of the heavy hitters. I was looking at some of those, like thinking, boy, I'd like to have, one or two of those for my collection. And then I went on my app on my phone to see what they were going for, and I I like forced the tear back up into my eyeball. I'm like,
Like twelve
yeah,
hundred dollars.
that ain't happening. Yep, it's
Yeah,
not happening.
yeah. The
Yeah, and
Go ahead. Go ahead, Rube.
well, I know that Magic Knight Rayearth and Albert Odyssey, and a game that I really loved, but it's not as popular, but it's still working design, Shining Wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Shining Wisdom. I love that game, man. The music in that game was
Mm-hmm.
so cool.
Yep.
It was definitely a Zelda kind of, but the game was fun. The game
Mm-hmm.
was good. Um, but anything they put out, man, I just gobbled it up. And it was funny because Babbage's on Toys R Us is they didn't carry a lot of those high end working designs. So as soon as they sold out. Like it was hard to find them after that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned how Sega has the just something about Sega itself and the games that they were able to bring. I'm like you. My favorite console is a Sega console, and it was the Dreamcast. and I'd been playing from way back NES, Intellivision, Atari, way back, as a kid, and up until today, I still have modern systems, and the Dreamcast's still my favorite system, and I can't put my finger on it. I don't know why. And sometimes you go, well, is it this point in your life that you just remember and the nostalgia? That's not it for me, though. I mean, it's weird. It's the collection of games and the games that were on there that hit me at that time. That's what I remember. I mean, we said that in the Dreamcast episode too. Is like it had multiplayer built in, couch co-op, so many different unique games. And so Sega was already kind of building on that in the Saturn, because they had some, a lot of good 2D games on there, and they were, or I mean, two-player games, and they were switching to 3D, and there was a lot of like iconic games that were on this system alone, right? You couldn't find, they didn't like sell it off to Sony and sell it off to Nintendo to put out. It was pretty much just straight up Sega stuff. And so yeah, it's weird. The dead console is the one that we remember. And so it's I don't know. Good choices, dude. I'm down with it.
On that note, if it's okay, I'd like to mention my last game that I picked, since we were talking about working designs.
Yeah.
It was Dragon Force.
Oh,
Not
that's
the
a
band.
holy grail game.
Yeah,
Dragon Force is.
Yeah. Go ahead.
What's that?
I was saying not the band Dragon Force, the actual game. Got it.
No, the actual
not the
game.
band.
In this game, I remember seeing it in the magazines, and I remember Dave Halverson of Game Fan talking about it. And it was a strategy game, and there was like 5 or 6 kings and queens that you could choose from, and it was kind of like a conquer a land thing, and you have armies and stuff like that. But Working Designs was working on it to try and bring it over to the States. But as most strategy games have, there's a lot of translation, a lot of text, voices, and just not like things that you would normally. It wasn't an easy translation. They had to work on it to bring it over here. But talk about 2D sprites, man. This game was pushing dozens and dozens of sprites at a time and army battles. I mean, it was just mind-blowing that this console was able to do it. I mean, you would line up armies, and you could have wizards and horses, and it was just like huge mega battles, man. It was just like, this was a fun game for me. And I finished 2 campaigns playing it, and I know to this day that it holds a very close place in Sega Saturn's hearts. Like it's still played to this day. It's such an epic game. There's actually a Dragon Force 2, and if you can find it, there's actually a translation in English for it. But
go ahead, Wolf.
Oh, I was going to say it also holds a special place in Ruben's wallet, because that's one of the holy grail games. I had an opportunity to get that, and I passed on it, and I could, my goodness, I could smash my head against the wall. I forget what the guy wanted, and he might have won it like $40 or $45 at the time, and I was like, no, I'll come across it again at some point. I never ever saw it again. And it's like, I can't even surmise how much that game is. Is it 1,000?
yeah, I mean, I think it's probably like in the top 5, with the top one being Panzer Dragoon Saga.
Yeah,
I know that's the most expensive Sega Saturn game, the most coveted, but it's definitely in the top 5. It's like Magic Knight Ray Earth. It's just one that not a lot of people are spreading around. But and then I remember there's a postcard inside of it that you could fill out and send to Working Designs, and if that was still intact, it was even worth more money. So I still have all that legitimate, all in its case. Yeah.
So those of you that are following along, watching this video, like I said, all 4 or 5 people that are going to watch this, if you're following along, make sure you get your little notepad out and you start writing down the names of these games. What was it? You said Ray Earth. What was that one?
Magic Knight Ray Earth.
Yeah.
Magic Knight Ray Earth, and then Dragon Force, right?
And that was a game based on a really popular Japanese anime, and Dragon Force. Yeah,
And
but
Shining Wisdom. Ruben
Shining
mentioned
Wisdom.
that's a lot of money too.
Tiny Wisdom is a gem. It's an underlooked gem. Really fun. A lot of Zelda-like RPG elements.
Try it, Wales. Try it. You'll. It's not. Just try it. See if you like it. And Bug's another one. So then Night Stalkers or Vampire Night or whatever that one was. That Wolf, are you up now?
I am up.
Ooh, let's do it.
And I just, of this whole conversation so far, the one thing that's resonated with me is what you said, Reub, and that is, and I'm just like, wow, he's right. Sega, like, may not have had like a wonderful expansive library, but the games that they did have had character, and they had like a certain flair or panache with some of the games. And I'm thinking of like Toe Jam and Earl, like like just like fun, funky, cool characters. And this is a game, it's one of my favorites without question. I think Ruben probably would like this too, because I know he's a big guitar player, and it's a Sega Saturn exclusive.
Yeah,
Mr. Bones, yes.
You want to talk about a game that has flair and character and is different and has got an amalgamation of a ton of different types of games in one, with a killer sound. The music is so awesome in this game. And it's just, I can't explain this game. This is just a game that you have to play. I mean, if you have the means to emulate, this is a game I want the audience to go out and try. Because could you guys help me out? How do you even explain this game? It's like a platformer and a rhythm-based game, and like it's got all these different types of stuff in one, and the graphics were so cool. And just, oh, look at this right in the back. Original music by blues guitarist Ronnie Montrose.
Montrose.
Yeah.
Montrose wrote the music for it.
Yep. And it's just, I don't know. I just this game is just, I think, a character, and I think a different, and how Sega was putting out different games. No game to me is as different as Mr. Bones. So, believe it or not, this is a lot of money too. This game, this is a couple $100, I think. I couldn't even believe it when I looked it up. I was like, damn.
Yeah, that's a good pick.
Yeah, Mr. Bones, I can't describe it either. But that one is one of the, I would say, with Virtua Fighter 2, and that one are really, really iconic Sega Saturn games, at least in the U.S. There's nothing like Mr. Bones, and when you saw it playing, you were like, whoa, because it is. It's like got rhythm aspects to it. It still has its platformer style, and it's 3D, and the fact that Mr. Bones, the character in general, good choice. Good choice.
Thanks.
I totally forgot about that game, and I like that. That's bringing back memories for sure.
Cool. All right, you're next, Dan.
Next. All right. So what's funny is we talked about this, and I guess maybe I'm just a fan of robots. So we talked about this in the Dreamcast episode, but my next choice is Virtual On again.
Oh, nice.
So Virtual On Cyber Troopers. This God, freaking light. There we go. Virtual On Cyber Troopers. This game, you guys, this was the actual arcade version of this game when it, and this was also a 1 or 2 player game. So that's the cool part about this. So you could play with your, couch, not necessarily co-op. It was a fighting game. Basically, it's a fighting game. But fighting with robots. It was really, really cool. It didn't have a huge selection of robots, but I mean, none of the games really had a huge selection of characters back in the day anyways. But this game, it moved really fast. Again, Dreamcast and Sega Saturn in particular, they had really good 2D sprites, but the Sega Saturn was the start of 3-dimensional fast-moving games as well, because they're 3-dimensional fighting games like Virtua Fighters and all that were fast as well. They weren't. Well, I take it Virtua Fighter, when you jumped, it wasn't fast because it had that kind of floaty feeling.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
if you're punching and you're on the ground, it was fast. So it was really weird how they did that. But anyways, but all of their games, like Virtual On had, if you guys remember, it had like the dash buttons and stuff. So it got really fast, really quick. And so I really, really like this game. If you guys get an opportunity again, I'm a fan of Virtual Ons. You guys check it out. You guys ever play this one for Sega Saturn?
Nope.
Oh man, and oh, I still have the styrofoam inside it. But yeah, so the disc. If you guys-
Nice. I actually remember buying it, and I didn't play. I didn't have the twin sticks peripheral with for it, and I didn't enjoy it that much. And I think I took it back.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, without the twin sticks, you had to use like the bumpers, if I remember right, to rotate the camera and be able to move around.
Yeah. And
So
I was like, I don't know, my attention span. I think on that game, I was like, I didn't get it, and I'd kicking myself. I should have held on to it.
if you have the twin sticks, you want to know a freaking rare peripheral, even more rare than this freaking NetLink adapter. Those twin sticks.
Hmm.
The Sega Saturn twin sticks, freaking ridiculous. Like we should go look it up right now. But they're so rare. They're like,
Look it up.
man, it's like, it's like finding a drug addict in Alabama with all her teeth. It's like a rarity. You will not find it anywhere. It's just not there. So
I remember toy stores didn't carry it.
no,
Like
you had like
wasn't-
special
it
order
wasn't
that crap.
sold with it.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
had
it
like
wasn't
special
sold
order.
with it.
It's like I want one of these, and they were expensive too. They were like the cost of the game.
$100
More than- yeah. Oh, you
Free,
can, only $100?
on eBay, you could pick up one in the box
Dude.
for $99.99.
Sold.
Oh, wait a minute, that's from Japan. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. I'll still buy it from Japan. I don't care. Send that.
Okay.
Send that junk. It's
I don't even see
$200 in shipping.
You
one.
probably
I
can't
don't.
find
I don't
them.
see a U.S. Hold on. That's
They're-
weird. Let me.
Dude, they're so freaking rare.
It might be.
Like
Yeah, I
that
don't
one's
even
probably a
see it.
scam, or it's gonna be like, oh, plus $130 shipping and handling, or $160 shipping and handling. It's like, wait, what?
Guess what? I am looking at past auctions. There is no North American. They're all Japan.
Yeah.
If you want the twin sticks, you got to import it. I don't even see a U.S. one. That's got to be rare.
They'll
like you
work.
said.
They'll work. The Japanese one, they all plug in the same. So, but you just, yeah, you're gonna have to pony up. So-
Wow, that's interesting. Okay, that was cool. Yeah, no, not one sale from the United States. They're all Japan sales. That's amazing.
Yep.
So cool.
All right, Reub, you're up, brother. You got another game for us?
Well, I had Virtual Cop 1 and 2. I had X-Men vs. Street Fighter. I had Dragon Force, and I had Virtua Fighter. So might
We'll-
be Wolf's turn again.
We'll just keep talking. Go ahead, Wolf. What
Okay.
you got?
All right. So here is something that is interesting. I don't know what it's worth, but it is super cool. I found it while I was digging through my stuff in the back closet. It is the Game Shark Sega Saturn video game enhancer.
Was that the first one? No, because Game Shark came out on that and N64 first, right? I think those are the first two that they made the enhancers for. The Game Shark specific.
Yeah. And this is, it's still it's
Don't open
I'll
it.
have to fire this up. No, it's opened. It's the top is open. It's just
Okay.
got the cellophane on the back, and it's got the UPC sticker still and stuff. I don't know. I thought this was cool. This is a neat little bit of video game memorabilia.
It was like a cartridge.
Yep, and it,
wasn't
Yes.
it went into
Correct.
this. It went into the
Yep.
expansion spot in the back. That's where
Mhm.
Ruben was talking, because wasn't this where the 4 meg cart would go to
Mhm.
up?
Yep.
Yep. So you could run some of those games that needed the extra oomph,
And
Yeah.
that's also I had a Sega backup memory, and that's where you could put it in there too for
Yep,
store
and then
extra
that-
games.
The network adapter popped in there too.
That thing, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was not my pick, but I just wanted to show that.
That's all right. Show away.
So
Wolf,
don't even try it.
keep going, brother. Keep going.
Okay. This is probably my favorite game on the system. I go back to this game time in and time out. I just have so much fun with it. It's another Sega Saturn exclusive, and it is Guardian Heroes,
Ooh.
which was like a beat 'em up RPG. It had RPG elements, 1 or 2 player story mode, character customization. It's just raw fun. I don't know how else to explain it. It's just one of my go-to games. It's just when I think of Saturn, I think of Guardian Heroes. I always love this game. I just love the way it looked. And I think this game like had up to 6 players. I think you could play on
Yes.
Guardian Heroes, which was unusual. But I don't know. Anybody have anything they want to say about Guardian Heroes? I mean,
This
it's a gem.
this game was for me was the pinnacle of Sega Saturn's 2D prowess. I mean, I remember firing it up and the music, probably the best music I think in any game for me, because I used to throw the game CD in my car and just rock the music.
Nice.
Music was so good, man. Just so Japanese anime music, just rocking guitars, just like awesome instrumental music. But on a side scroll level, it had 3 planes, so you could jump in and out, and your character could switch between other people. There was magic, and the amount of sprites that were just coming on the screen were just insane.
Yeah.
And I remember just coming across the first time I hit, there was a certain pivotal part in the first like 10-15 minutes of the game, and then these huge giant green plant blobs came on the screen, and I'm like, what am I playing here, man? I don't know what I was playing.
Yeah.
But the game is a blast. It's the ultimate side scroller. It's just too fun, and there is a code for it, and the code unlocks every character in the game, and you could literally just mash it out in arena with any character. And the cool thing is that every single character, there was like 20 some characters in the game. Every character had its own special moves and its own magic spells, and you can get the multi-tap like Wolf was talking about, and you can play up to like 6 people.
Yep. 6
and
people.
You could sit there and just mash it out and just go to town on each other. So an amazing game, man. But the music was there, the sprites. PlayStation couldn't do this.
Nope.
It's Sega Saturn, man. 2D monster.
Nope.
What?
And it's a must buy, I think. Like if you're going to collect, or you have deep pockets and you decide, oh my goodness, this sounds great, I want to collect for Saturn, you'd have to put this on your top 10.
As a quick side note, it did come out on Xbox, and you could buy it as one of those side games in the shop for Xbox 360. And I had that version too at some point, but that's the only other time I've ever seen it.
Wow.
It's what I'm trying to remember, because I don't remember if I played that game or not. Was it kind of like Golden Axe style side scroller?
Yep.
Yeah, with multiple people. Okay.
Yep.
And it was kind of weird how the different, when you could pop into the 3 layers, you'd have people bouncing around in all these different. Yeah, I remember. Yep. I don't own it, but that game, I agree with you. That game is awesome. Yeah, good dude, Wolf. Wealth of knowledge again, just dropping stuff out.
No, the OG is Ruben is the wealth of knowledge. I'm just his apprentice.
Yeah, well then what does that make me? I'm like less than that.
You're the jester.
I'm on that. Fair enough. Where's my hat? My hat right now.
I'm teasing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. No, it's fine. I mean, because I liked the Saturn, but I did not own as many games as you. As a matter of fact, I didn't buy a Saturn until it had already been done. Its lifespan had already been. I want to say I bought my Saturn in probably 2000, 2001.
Oh, it was well discontinued by that point.
No, but I'm talking this one. I had one way back, but I traded it in.
Okay.
I had it. I originally got it probably within the first year that it was out. As soon as basically when Virtua Fighter 2 came out, I bought one, and I had it, and then I got rid of it, and then I bought another one because I was like, why did I get rid of this? I want to play some of these games again. And so like early 2000s, I went and bought it again, and it was cheap at that time still. I want to say I think I bought my Saturn at that point. I think it was like 2001, and it was probably $50 for the Saturn
Sounds
with
about
all
right.
the hookups and everything. And dude, as soon as I got it, it's like holy grail for me. I'm like I don't get rid of consoles anymore. Like I made that mistake. I stopped when I got rid of my Sega Dreamcast. I had an import Dreamcast before they were released here for House of the Dead and Street Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I said that story, but as soon as I got rid of that, something changed in me. Something tweaked, and I went. After I got my original Dreamcast, it was something that I said I need it. I wish I still had my Japanese one too. And then I started going back, and because I still had some consoles and stuff, of course, but I started going back and started purchasing. That's when I really started going back and purchasing more and more of my and started getting back into my retro collecting, because it was like, nope, that was the shock, was the Sega Saturn and the Sega Dreamcast. And I was like, nope, have to do it, have to make it happen.
All right,
My
you're
turn.
up, Dan.
I'm gonna go, and I'm gonna throw a twofer out here, so we're not here forever. But I'm gonna throw up Clockwork Knight
Yeah.
and Clockwork Knight 2. What's funny about these ones is Clockwork Knight doesn't say Sega exclusive, but Clockwork Knight 2 does. Wild.
That's weird.
But Clockwork Knight was another one of those really fun, like platformer style games. You know, I talked about, what was the one that I talked about? I talked about like Mickey's Castle of Illusion and stuff like that. These are very similar to that style of platformer. Is you know, like you're in a toy land and you're jumping around, and there's like Jack in the Boxes and stuff that you're bouncing over, and you're using a keyblade. The first keyblade, baby, was in this. It was, Mickey and those guys, they stole it. But yeah, this game is very, very unique. The design, the level design, and the character design, just like Mr. Bones, was really, really cool. Very bright and shiny. The music was also fantastic. And just like every other Sega game and every other Sega character, for the most part, on the good ones in particular, he had that freaking saunter when he would walk around, right? He had the big feet. You always remember this. If you played this game, you remember what he looked like when he was walking, holding the sword, and these big old feet with the points, and he's walking. It's one of those iconic games that once you get in and you play it a little bit, add this to your list. This is a fun one, and it's not only fun for little kids. It's fun for when you get more seasoned. It's not like oh, this is toys, so it's a little kiddie game. No, this is a lot of fun. This game will aggravate you sometimes. It still has the difficulty that you would expect from older games, but and not very forgiving in a lot of ways. But it is definitely a lot of fun. You guys remember these ones, don't you?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
I have Clockwork Knight. I don't have the second.
Just as good. Just like Bug 2.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I played the first one, but after I finished it, I sold it.
What? You didn't see yourself playing it again?
No. I remember it was kind of short.
Yep.
But it was a fun ride, and I never got into the two, but they were, again, just those different Sega games, man. Just unique.
Yeah, it was a continuation game too. So the second one, just a kind of a continuation. But I can tell you why most likely that you got rid of it, Reub. The music was good, the sound was good, but it wasn't as catchy as a lot of the other Sega games.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I love that game. That's a great choice. I mean, I have the first. I've learned a lot from this episode, because like the sequels, I missed out on the sequels. Like Bug, I didn't know Bug had a sequel. And now, the Clockwork game, I got to keep my eye out on those.
No, you don't.
That's awesome.
You got them emulated.
Yeah, I know, but I want them.
I know, but you try them out first. See what you like before you pay $200 for one.
Yeah, I'm paying $200.
All right, go ahead, Wolf.
I got a threefer here because I want to time, so I'm going to hold them up in a row. You can't think about the Saturn without these games, and they're so unique. And well, here's the first.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is.
Panzer Dragoon,
Keep it going, buddy.
Yeah.
Panzer Dragoon 2,
Solid games, man.
and my holy grail.
There it is. That's the one.
This is easily a 1,000. I would say
Yeah.
easily.
You got the holy trifecta, buddy.
Yeah.
Easy. That you sell those as a pack, dude. They're in such good shape. You see those cases?
Yeah, they are in good shape.
Man, don't stack
Yep.
them on anything. Vertically only. Yeah, look at
Here
that.
they are. It's just, I like we all, if you're a collector, I'm very fussy about condition and stuff. Like I don't even it got so bad, like I didn't want like greatest hits cases. That's how like OCD I am. When I was collecting for PS1, they had to be black label first releases.
Oh,
I would get rid of the ones that said greatest hits. I think they were like green for
Yep.
PS1. They just looked like garbage when they were on my shelf. So I didn't like it. But anyway, I think they kind of speak for themselves. They're like a very unique type of game, right? Like you're flying, you're on your creature, and it's
you're shooting.
You're shooting. It's like a shooter. It's I don't know. They're fun and they're unique, and it's kind of fits the Reuben mantra throughout this episode of Sega character games. I just don't know another like company that would put out something like a Mr. Bones or a Guardian Heroes or a Panzer Dragoon. I mean, you're gonna go to Sega for those type of games.
Flying
they're a
dragons.
ball.
Flying dragons shooting like laser beam fireballs out of their mouth. I mean, what is not to like in 3D?
Yep.
And the music,
No
too.
doubt. And real quick, I'm gonna just pop this one up because I have a feeling I know what we're gonna end up with. But I like this game. I don't know. We'll see what you think. It's Herc's Adventures.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, is this game fun? It's cartoony and interesting, and I love like the Greek mythology. I think you have to like save Persephone, and just it was so cool. And I know, did Herc's, am I thinking of Herc's? There's a Herc's game. Did it come out for PS1 too? I don't think this is not system specific. This is not an exclusive, because I see it's LucasArts, but I swear I remember playing this for PS1 as well, but I remember this being the better version of the two. It had better sound. I thought the graphics were a little sharper, and this is just a really fun game. I don't know. I don't know what to say. It's you guys ever play it?
Dude, I played that one. I do remember it. But that game's freaking awesome. It is like you said, it's shiny, it's bright, it's fun.
Yeah.
The thing that I remember that I just wanted to key on, and you kind of just said it and you glossed by it, was LucasArts. At that time, LucasArts was just like what the other company that Ruben was just talking about, right? That was anything that came out from LucasArts for the most part in that window of time was freaking awesome, because they had like Day of the Tentacle, they had like
Full Throttle.
Yep. Yeah, and so it was one of those situations where like all of the stars aligned for those number of years on that certain system, and or even for multiple systems, because LucasArts was throwing their good stuff out on multiple systems. But yeah, that's a sleeper. Any of you guys that are paying attention, yeah, Herc, that is definitely a sleeper that you want to check out if you have the ability to play it.
I'm gonna check that one out too. I've never played it. I've heard of it, but I never got to play it.
Oh, that's a Megacade one, Rube. Check that out, definitely.
Yeah, thank you for that, man.
Yeah.
Rube, I got a question. Do you ever flip the Megacade just to Sega Saturn and just let it spin the Sega Saturn wheel?
Oh yeah.
And just let it spin, and you just go,
No.
ooh, yep, I'm gonna play that one now.
Yeah, I sure do. I'll
Tell
do that to MAME and Sega Saturn all the time.
give me a weird sleeper one that popped up one time for you that you just had no idea that you would like and that you liked on Sega Saturn.
For Sega Saturn?
Yep. There isn't one because you played them all.
A weird just sleeper. Boy, Three Dirty Dwarves.
Yeah, that was one I was thinking about too.
Does anybody
Yep.
remember that one?
Yep.
Blazing,
Yes.
Blazing Dragons. Boy, Three Dirty Dwarves though was fun.
Oh yeah,
It was a fun game.
what a good pick. Oh man.
But yeah, there's so many, man. I mean, we didn't even talk about Knights, but they
Speaking
just had weird games.
of that, you just touched on it. Let's talk about the reason why this controller was made specifically. This controller was made for one game starting off. It was, I want to say, was this the first controller that had this besides the N64? That had some sort of analog control?
Yeah, I don't remember.
I mean, the PlayStation had an analog control as well, but it wasn't really used very often for the original PlayStation. But so this controller specifically was made for, and this is gonna be my last game that we're gonna talk about, and this is gonna be one we'll dig into a little bit, is Knights.
Mm-hmm.
So Knights, this game in particular was really, really cool. It was like, do you remember, what was it, Sonic 3 that had like that 3D feel? Was that the one that had like the 3D, spinning bonus levels and stuff? That's kind of how this reminded me of that. Yeah, and Wolf's holding up one that's even more awesome than mine because that's the controller packaging. I don't have any of that stuff.
But,
3D controller pad, they call it.
Yeah.
I love the marketing. 3D controller
3D,
pad.
yeah, technically all the controller pads are 3D, you know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
God.
So they didn't want to put
Yeah.
analog because us Americans were just too stupid to understand that at that point, apparently.
Yeah.
But really, really a cool system. A cool controller. And what's really, did you guys know that this piece came off?
Yeah,
Like, I don't even know.
Now,
I don't
Yeah.
even know why that. I don't know why. But so cool. I know this is the predecessor for the Dreamcast controller because if you've ever had a Dreamcast controller, you'll notice it looks very, very similar to this design. Very similar.
Definitely.
The triggers and all that kind of stuff. So just imagine a big window cut in here for the VMU. So, yeah, but very, very cool. Cool controller, cool game, very bright and shiny. It is that was definitely a system seller. I think this was towards I want to say that Knights came out kind of towards the end of its lifespan, didn't it?
Trying to think when Knights came out.
Yeah,
towards the end.
This was one that they tried to, I think, salvage the system itself, but it was just too late. It couldn't. And this is a great game, but it was just too late.
Love Knights.
It was way too late. And then they even, because you can tell that they pushed Knights because of what Wolf's going to talk about here in a second with what they did with the Knights concept. It was very, very good, and they were trying to, I think, breathe life back into Knights itself. So they made other versions of it. So
oh yeah,
you're wondering where I was going, huh? So I decided to help you out there.
That's so funny. It's here is Knights, but it's Christmas Nights in the Dreams. And it's Knights and all of the levels, like there's Christmas trees that are decorated and it's snowing and there's holly berries and it's the back is a little messed up, but I don't know if you could see some of the graphics from the back if I hold it up. It's very colorful and like Dan said, it's a way to kind of extend. All right, now that you've played Knights, now you got to pick up the Knights Christmas sampler. It's like, oh man.
I have it too, and I remember playing it, and you could collect the presents.
Yes.
Yep.
and I played this game till my fingers I collected every present for it, man. It was just like, oh, cool. It's still Knights. I think it was like the first 2 levels, or the boy and the girl. But it was all Christmas decked out, but the fact that you could collect things for it every time. I still played the shit out of it. I thought it was a cool little bonus thing.
Yep. But it's like you said, Reub, this is the type of game that you would play over and over and over again, just to see if, like, you could get a better score, or find a shortcut or two. Like, just it was, I don't know. I think of Saturn. I also think of Knights. That comes to mind. I know Sonic was still a mascot. I actually own a few Sonic games for Saturn. I didn't bring them out, but there's a real expensive one. I think is it called Sonic R?
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
racing one.
That's like $200, like for that version of the game. I should have got it, but I already had enough games.
It's all right.
But
Well, Saturn is not one known for Sonic games. It's just not. The Saturn, you don't think the big heavy hitters for Sonic is not happening on Saturn.
right,
They happen on Genesis and they happen
Yeah.
on Dreamcast.
Dreamcast.
They missed Saturn, like the big
Yeah.
heavy hitters for that.
I think they
Sonic
all had-
R is good too. I like Sonic R.
besides Sonic R, all they had was Sonic 3D Blast.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
That's
it
it.
was an okay game, but it was also released on Genesis too.
Ah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. So now, Wolf, do you have any other games, or do we want to kind of wrap this thing up
No,
and give us
no.
our grades?
I mean, we'll go on until
I know.
I feel
I
my
know we might
beard
have to have another
growing
supplemental
in
episode where we're going to start talking about other Saturn games, and because that we're
I
like,
have-
why did we talk
I
about
have-
this one?
I have two more I wanted to add in there. I forgot.
Throw them out, my
Um,
brother.
Legend of Oasis.
Never heard of
That
that.
was a really cool game, and its predecessor was called Beyond Oasis on Genesis. It
Legend
was a
of
very
Oasis.
fun, kind of like an adventure, top-down kind of game. Hard though, hard as nails, man. Super hard, and you had to have patience. And the second shout I wanted to, because you guys brought up the Knights controller, the second shout I wanted to do was the Dark Savior. Dark
Now
Savior
that I've
was
heard of.
from a developer called Climax, and Climax did Landstalker
Oh yeah.
for Genesis. But what's cool about Dark Savior was like a 3D, and you could actually use the Knights controller, and you could use the analog pad for the camera. And I highly recommend Dark Savior. It hasn't aged that great, but the story is still fun, and it has a lot of platform elements to it, along with the RPG and a little bit of fighting in it. But if you like Landstalker, you'll like it. Dark Savior, highly recommended.
Ooh,
Taking notes.
two like bonus gems at the end there. I didn't hear the first one. I did hear the second, and I agree with you. I think I played it on the Megacade, that second one, Dark Savior. I was like, ooh, this one like is kind of rough on the eyes.
It's a little rough on the eyes,
Yeah.
but it's fun.
All right.
Okay, so we are to the point. So this is episode 10 now, but we are to the point where we're going to be grading the system based upon, how collectible it is, the availability of the hardware, the availability of the games, what it meant to gaming history. I have to add that one in there too, since the last supplemental that we had. So I'm going to go through first for me and give you my grade based upon all of those factors. First and foremost, the system is sexy as hell. It is one of the most beautiful consoles that were ever made, in my opinion. The console itself, it just kind of looks like a box, but if you actually hold it, it has some awesome lines to it. It is beautiful. That console is just amazing. And their controllers, everything about their controllers, they're just pretty. There's some gloss and matte finish to them. Just the icon, or the icon, the Sega badge on them, the Saturn badge, it's just everything about it, just awesome. And then, of course, the games that it has, it doesn't have a huge library, but a lot of the iconic games that it has, just amazing. But where it's going to fall on on my grading scale is going to be a B. The only reason it's hitting a B, two reasons. One is that, again, it is hard to find the games now, and if you do find the games, they're going to be expensive as heck. Like, you're going to be John Wick sacrificing a finger for one of those games. I'm just telling you. And you can start looking them up, but the system itself, if you can find the games and they don't have disc rot, and they, and you got the system, so those are the things that dropped it down for collectability for me. But so we're going to go for Dantron. I'm giving it a B. I wish I could go a little higher, but based upon those factors, that's where it falls for me. So what you got, Wolf?
No, I'm gonna shoot it to Ruben because I'm actually still thinking.
Okay, Rube, what you got?
I'm gonna give it a B too. Um, I'm gonna give it a B just because I think Sega will always have the reputation. It's just a 2D powerhouse, man. I mean, even at this time, it's like no other console was pushing those 2Ds like it was, and it'll always have that legacy of just 2D games, just like killing it. But Sega also had a lot of games for it that were never out, and they really bring the arcade experience home. AM2, they kind of dropped the ball on the Daytona, but they killed it with the Virtual On. They killed it on the Virtual Fighters. They killed it with the Virtual Cops, and they get an A for that. So I'm gonna still give it a B because I just think it was iconic for its time. It made its mark in history, and to this day, still a great collector's item. So B for me.
The games are playable still too. That's the thing too. If you can get the games, and it's not like some systems that we've talked about that you're going to get a game and you're going to be like, nah, I don't want to play this. I'm only going to play it for nostalgia purposes. Some of the graphics on the original hardware still hold up. If you can play them, they still hold up. Emulation, there's a couple of emulators that are kind of a little sketchy, but the games themselves are still fun. They still hold up. They are something that you will play. So that's something else to think about.
So something that we didn't get into a lot in this episode, but we did talk about it briefly, is the Saturn is a great console to import. And a lot of the games, not a lot, but I would say games could be cheaper or they could be more expensive if you're importing, but it really does open up the library a lot if you could get, the thing that you attach onto the back, and it really makes the console like lush because you just don't have that limited North American library. It opens up into the PAL and Japanese regions. But I think my rating is going to be a B minus. I'm going to mimic everything that everybody else said. For me, I'm just lowering the grade a bit because I consider myself a seasoned flea market veteran. I've been doing it for, my God, 25, 30 years at this point. And I'm not kidding when I say in that time span, I have seen 5 to 6 Sega Saturn games in that time span. You just don't see them. So if that's a system that you want to collect for, good luck. Good luck. I mean, you'd have to rob somebody's house, or I don't know how you get these games, or you'd have to open up your wallet and pay top dollar on eBay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, and that hurts the grade overall because this is a retro show and it's for people that want to get into retro gaming. And it would be a great system to collect for, but there's, the best availability is, if you have the games, that are in the wild that you could get.
Yeah.
Our last episode was on the Atari, and we talked about how, like, you could find Atari games god darn everywhere. You are not going to find Sega Saturn games. You're just not. And I'm telling you that as somebody that's been doing this for a long time. So I don't know. I mean, it's a great system for everything that you said, but as far as retro collectability, I just don't know how you're going to get this stuff.
And I'm going to touch on something you said there too, Wolf. The opening up the library, if you're able to import games. Here's the problem. They run into an issue. You will run into an issue on the Sega Saturn, just like the N64, with needing an expansion device.
Oh, yeah.
To play all of the library. So trying to find the expansion device for a Sega Saturn, again, that's another piece that's like, all right, you might be able to find a bootleg made one or something. You might be able to find, I don't know what the bootleg library is, availabilities for Saturn is. I haven't really looked into that stuff. But so there's a chance if you get the hardware, you might be able to find this stuff for cheaper. But just like an N64, like you need the expansion pack to open up the entire library there. But here's the biggest difference. N64 and Sega Saturn, difference in cost of games is like night and day. Like a good you know, like the most expensive like N64 games that you're gonna find just kind of out in the wild, just random, is probably gonna be around $100, right? They're gonna be between 40 to $100. You might find some that are ridiculous, of course. There's always gonna be a few of those, but now we're talking Sega Saturn. You're gonna be lucky to find one for $100. And it doesn't matter what game it is, dude. You can go online and you can look up a legit original Sega Saturn. People they throw the games away, or the games that have disc rot or whatever, and they'll actually sell just the cases. And some of those cases will sometimes be 30 to $50 per case,
Yeah,
no cracks.
definitely. Yep.
And then they won't warranty if it gets shipped to you and it cracks because they're so delicate. And so it's just kind of like, all right, there's all these things that go into Saturn collecting. But again, if the system wasn't so freaking iconic and sexy, like I wouldn't be pushing it as much as I am. But I freaking love this system. Not even, and I don't have as much experience as someone like Ruben here. Like, but I personally love the system. I love what it, you know, where it was in its time frame. I wish that they would have done it better. I think they did it dirty. But there are some definite bangers, and I really want to, just like the Dreamcast, just pour one out for the Saturn, because it was gone too soon. It had so much potential, and they carried the potential in Japan for a while, but even at that, I mean, they were losing so much market share to PlayStation, and even in Japan, that it was just like, nah, it was dying.
Quick something that you mentioned, Dan, that I think is important. I remember when I wanted to get into the Japanese importing and how hard it was to find that thing to plug into the back and the expansion pack. And I learned a valuable lesson. I went on eBay and I bought, Ruben, you might know what I'm talking about. I bought the Dungeons and Dragons by Shadows over Mystera and the other one. And because it looked amazing for Saturn. And I was so happy, and I waited a long time, and it came, and then I found out I needed that expansion, like it wasn't going to play. And then I'm like, oh my God, I spent all that money on the game and I can't even play it. And I had to hunt down that expansion pack. And it was, so you're right. I mean, just even getting the hardware to be able to do that is, could be problematic. So just sharing a little incident that I went through, because God, I love that game. Those games are so awesome. But I just remember my disappointment in, I put it in. I'm like, why isn't the game playing? And then I was like, well, because you need the expansion pack. I was like, oh God. So, oh well.
I want to start looking up some of these model numbers and stuff and see what's up. Like, what's the model number? MK 80,000A. I want to know how many models they actually released of this. You know what I'm saying?
No, I mean, they only sold 9-point-something million units in the United States, so not a lot.
But just look at how sexy this is, though. I mean, just this sitting on your, it's just a,
it looks cool.
It looks
beautiful, like futurized a little bit.
It is just a beautiful system, dude. I mean, like everything about it, even like the little lines that are kind of cut into it.
Yeah. Oh, it's definitely awesome.
Anyways. Yeah, I had like a Starship Enterprise top to it a little bit.
Yeah. Where's Adam? Where's Adam needs to chime? Oh, he wasn't even born at this time, probably. Freaking guy. Little kids.
Yeah, right.
Anyways, well, so I guess that's it, right? Does anybody have anything else for Sega Saturn? You guys want to throw another? Reub, last time I asked this question, you just threw random stuff out. So you got anything else, brother?
Just no. I mean, I could go on and on about it, but yeah. No, I think we got a good idea of like some of all of our favorite games, and you guys hit some good ones for me too. And those are the ones I still hold dear to my heart. You know, all those the Knights and the Virtual Ons and all. I mean, anything Sega did. I think we did a pretty good job tonight, talking about it.
And you know, I appreciate you guys. You know, I appreciate you taking your time out to hang out on the coming into the inner sanctum again, to sit down on the couch and just talk video games. I really appreciate you taking the time out to come and do that with me. Reub, it was a pleasure having you in here. I gotta have you back, brother. Gotta have you back.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me, man. Real honor to be here. Appreciate you.
We thought of you instantly. When Sega Saturn, it was like this show ain't happening if Ruben's not there, because
Means a lot.
you're the
Thank you.
guy I would go to on anything Sega Saturn.
Oh, I appreciate that, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're the
I got-
expert in our community.
I still got them. I'm never. They're gonna be in my will someday.
Dantron
All my
first.
games. I
Dantron
got 2
first.
of the consoles. Got two of the Knights controllers. About 4 of the control. I got the guns. I'm holding on to them for dear life. So just check them every once in a while for disc rot. We'll be all right.
Yeah, it's serious.
Well,
Thanks for having me, guys.
absolutely, Reub. Well, you got that huge, nice arcade space down there. Now you just got to put up some shelving so you can display those out there.
Oh, I would love it if you did that. That would be so
That's a
dope.
good idea. Maybe I'll put a little CRT corner.
Oh,
And put up an old school CRT TV and hook up some of my old. That might be cool. Yeah, and then
Dude, that would be dope.
And then put the old systems and just let them store those
Oh,
old systems.
That's a must,
Yeah.
man.
Maybe
That would
I'll
be
do
so
that.
cool.
That's a good idea.
Man,
If not, I'm just gonna sit in boxes in my storage. So
Yeah.
might as well show them off.
Yeah, definitely, man. People would
Good
love
call.
to play that and check out, see what you have. It would be like going into a Saturn museum, man. Seeing that crap on the shelf, I would love to see that.
Yeah, I'll put all the 3DO stuff on the bottom.
Ooh,
yeah,
way bottom.
Yeah, the CDI stuff. Throw the CDI stuff down there too.
Well, if you guys have a 3DO episode, I'd love to be for that one.
Oh,
too.
dude, we can do a 3DO episode. I have one. I don't have a whole lot of games for it, and I'll be happy to go over that. You are in.
That was fun. It was one of my favorite consoles too. It was very, very underdog system.
Oh,
but there's some gems for it.
Descent,
so.
Dude, don't even get me started. Oh, bro, yeah.
FIFA Soccer on it was awesome. John Madden was awesome. Yeah,
man.
Another episode.
Yep, another episode. Look, we're already starting to talk. We're getting wound up. So, hey, Wolf, again, thank you so much for coming again. My co-host, my co-pilot, the guy that keeps this thing moving. I really appreciate you. I always have. Thanks for, hanging out with me again. So I really appreciate you.
Yep. Yeah, and real quick, thanks, Reub. I say this every episode, but head to Dantron69K's YouTube, subscribe. He's doing some awesome stuff. I can't keep up with his videos. He'll chime in and he's like, Wolf, did you check this video? I'm like, oh my God, man. I just can't keep up watching the stuff. He's constantly putting stuff out. Wealth of knowledge and information, and super entertaining, as you could tell if you've tuned into our shows. Funny, witty, knowledgeable, and I enjoy doing these shows with you and having our friends come on as guests to be part of this. It's a lot of fun. Hey, look, we know this isn't gonna we're not going to be taking over the angry video game nerd anytime soon or anything like that, but this is a little niche for us. We enjoy doing it, and I really don't care if 4 people watch or 400. So that's not why we're doing it. We're not doing it for any sort of accolades or fame. So
hear, hear.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
All right, y'all. Until next time, later.
Peace.